All right, everybody, Logan Alec here. This is my second video of the day today. That bipartisan group of senators has just released an outline of their stimulus proposal. Last week we had a chart. Today we have an outline. We still haven't seen a bill, but I thought I'd just go through the outline here with y'all. All right, so from the top here, state and local. All they say is that they want $160 billion for state and local. That's not a good sign. That means they still haven't agreed on what this looks like. Not much to say there, but the silence does kind of speak in and of itself for the fact that they haven't made much progress in negotiating state and local and also liability protection. Unemployment. Joe Manchin said last week that the $300 unemployment would be retroactive to December 1st and go for 18 weeks. It looks like they've shrunk that a bit to no retroactive benefits, right? They're just starting the end of December, right? So not retroactive to December 1st, but going until the end of April. So maybe this is where some people got confused, right? Because when I talked about the Mnuchin proposal last night, getting rid of supercharged weekly unemployment boost, people were like, no, they're just making it not retroactive. Well, it looks like that's actually what this $908 billion proposal is looking at doing, not the Mnuchin proposal, right? Mnuchin wants to take out the 300 altogether. Anyway, it says that in this proposal, all of the pandemic unemployment insurance programs will be extended for another 16 weeks from their expiration at the end of December. This includes the PUA for gig workers, the PEUC. The PEUC is the additional weeks of unemployment beyond normal state unemployment. They're saying that those will be extended by 16 weeks as well. They got some money in there for state technology, right? Because you remember when the CARES Act $600 boost was rolled out, the big headline was, oh, states can't implement this. States can't implement this because they're archaic computer systems. Well, it looks like now they're throwing in $1 billion for state technology. I'm not sure if that'll do the trick, but at least they're trying. Some administrative adjustments here as well. Now, here's the PPP, right? I think this is the biggest section, right? Again, obviously in this proposal as well, the PPP is a big priority. This section here actually looks very similar to Republican proposals that we've seen in the past. They're doing $300 billion for PPP, and they're saying that it'll be a second round of PPP for the hardest hit businesses here. Okay, they're saying eligibility would be limited to small businesses with 300 or fewer employees that have sustained a 30% revenue loss in any quarter of 2020. I take that to mean, I don't know for sure, right, until I see the bill, if the bill ever gets drafted, but I take that to mean you could compare, Q2 2019 to Q2 2020, and if there's at least a 30% revenue drop year over year for that quarter, right, or any other quarter, then you're eligible. It could mean you compare like Q2 to Q1 2020, but in terms of language we've seen on this before, it seems to be a comparison of the same quarter year over year, 2019 to 2020. So it looks like they want to expand the definition of forgivable expenses to include PPE. They want to clarify that expenses paid for with PPP proceeds are tax deductible. IRS won't like that. There was a big fight over that earlier this year, if you all recall. They're also talking about simplified loan forgiveness for borrowers that got a PPP loan of $150,000 or less. We've seen this kind of language before in other proposals. And it says they should also set aside specific funding for to make sure borrowers in underserved communities get help, also for small businesses with 10 or fewer employees, right? So we're kind of saying, okay, let's make sure that borrowers in these groups here, minorities, right, underserved communities, very small businesses, 10 or fewer employees, let's make sure that some funds are specifically set aside for them so the bigger businesses don't just gobble it all up. Down here it says we have some funding for independent live venue operators. I think McConnell had something like that, right, in his very weak proposal last week. Okay, so that's basically the PPP small business. All right, on to the next page here. There's $12 billion basically for CDFIs, that's community development funds, and MDIs, that's minority depository institutions. They got transportation funding in here, right? Obviously airlines, right? Airports, bus, Amtrak, public transit systems. You got $35 billion to the provider relief fund. This is basically hospitals. We got $6 billion for vaccines and about $10 billion for testing and tracing. Now, you'll recall that a couple weeks ago, it was kind of in the news that lots of states have essentially given up, right, almost on contact tracing just because there's so many cases now. So I found it interesting that, you know, it's about 10 billion here for testing and tracing, but in terms of vaccines, right, especially vaccine distribution, it's not nearly as much. So, you know, I found that interesting as well. All right, on to the next page. We got $82 billion for education, similar to the CARES Act funding priorities. Student loan provisions, CARES Act student loan provisions now extended through April 30th. We got $25 billion for rental assistance to be distributed through state and local governments. It says 90% of the funds must be used for payment of rent and other related living costs such as utilities. It says specific guardrails to ensure support for the most in-need households, with a preference for households with 50% of area median income and below. So that's basically saying we're going to make sure we focus on those who need it the most, make sure that they get the assistance they need. It says the support here can cover up to 18 months of arrears, as well as future rents. That's what forward assistance means. So you look at that and think 18 months, wow, that's kind of back to 2019. Right. So I think some Republicans might balk at that and say that's not related to COVID. That's 2019, you know, overdue rent. But I think the reason is because of this eviction moratorium. Okay. They're saying that the eviction moratorium should only be extended another month until the end of January. Right. So I guess if they give people money to pay their back rent for up to 18 months and their future rent as well, right, they can get caught up in January, then they're good. Right. So I think the thinking is here, they want to get the landlords caught up in January so they don't kick out their tenants in February once the pandemic and the eviction moratorium ends. And I guess that makes sense, right? Why they're going back 18 months. Because, you know, let's say someone was a little bit behind on rent before COVID-19 hit, and then COVID-19 hit, and now they're just in a whole world of hurt. Well, we don't want them on the street either, right? You know, just because they're behind on rent maybe for a few months before COVID-19. So they're saying the assistance could be used for up to 18 months back rent, right? Which is obviously a little bit before the pandemic, as well as for future rents as well. So there is allocation for food assistance, temporary increase in SNAP by 15% for 4 months, a slew of other food assistance funding here that you can see yourself, not really specific on the dollar amounts, but I'm sure each one of those will get at least a little bit. $13 billion for farmers, $600 million of that specifically for fisheries. So the Postal Service here, right, this $10 billion Postal Service loan now is interesting, right, because you'll recall that previously they were talking about this loan being forgiven if the Postal Service cash balance dips below $8 billion or something like that. But here it's saying no, $10 billion, no repayment required, right? And we're not even going to go back to what we talked about over the summer. Okay, so that's basically just money for the Postal Service. Of course, they have to account for it here. $10 billion for childcare, a little over $10 billion for broadband, almost $5 billion here for mental health and addiction support. And then here it is. Here's the liability protections right here. Agreement in principle as the basis for good faith negotiations. What? What's that supposed to mean? That tells us nothing. So yeah, there's not much here we didn't already know. You know, I mean, I look at this bit here and I say, okay, so obviously not much progress has been made on state and local or liability protection, right? And if there's anything that's going to hold this up, it's this, right? It's liability protection, and it's, here it is. And it's this, right? The state and local. And they basically give us nothing in this outline on that bit. So yeah, nothing super surprising or anything here, other than maybe, right, this outline kind of contradicting what Joe Manchin said last week. Joe Manchin, in the Q&A section of this bipartisan group of senators press conference last week, said that the unemployment would be 18 weeks, retroactive to December 1st. I played you that clip, but now they're saying no retroactive unemployment. We're just starting bidding in January for 16 weeks. So someone actually, obviously, negged them down a bit there. All right, everybody, just want to give this quick update going over the outline that we just got from the bipartisan group of senators on the $908 billion stimulus proposal. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.